Welcome to Keeping Up with Trends. This is Fed Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading. And today we have Sergio Davids, our host, with a list of things that he wants to ask about.
Oh yes. So we've gotten quite a lot of responses from our traders, especially the new ones, on getting back to the basics. So from how to trade Forex, how to trade stocks, how to trade indices. So I thought it would be cool to do a series, in Q1 2024 on just that. So today's topic, I'd like us to talk about stocks. So I guess let's start with the basics. What is the stock market?
I guess this is very elusive to many people. Like they see a name of a company that they recognize and it's
Yeah,
located on a ticker tape and they don't know how to make sense of it. But when they go to the store, like Nike, for example, right? They
yeah,
go to the store and they buy a Nike pant. So all these type of companies, okay? Um, at one point, there weren't these famous and glamorous companies. At one point, they were just an idea, okay? Just like Philip Knight, who was the founder of Nike, had this idea of making these sneakers that were fashionable, that were athletic, and they were game changing. And then, one of the best things he ever did was recruit Michael Jordan and really
oh
brought
yes.
Nike into the forum. And there's a movie recently that just came out with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Interestingly enough, uh, it's really fascinating because it's a good example of how things came to be. So, when you're an up and coming company, when you have an idea and you're an entrepreneur, generally speaking, you usually start out by going to friends and family to pitch your
Yeah,
idea to them in order for
yeah.
them to invest in your thing.
I mean, Amazon did that. Jeff
Amazon did
Bezos.
that.
He asked his
Apple did
family for
that.
money.
Everybody does that. I mean, that's just the way you got to start, right? So you get your seed money, but that money is small money, right? How much could you possibly get from your friends and family
Exactly.
unless they're
Unless you're
Warren Buffett,
lucky. They happen to
right?
be billionaires.
Right. So at that point, you're pretty much tapped out, and so you go to your next circle of influence in order to raise money, and that could be private investors, that could be people in your community that are private investors, and again, you're limited there as well. The next step is to go to financial institutions, banks and investment houses that they go over your books and they assess based on the assets that you have how much they're willing to invest in your company. And it could be based on several ways, either that they look in your assets or they look at your account receivables, which is basically your income stream, and they can assess how much, almost like leverage, they give you in
Yeah.
order for you to keep alive and for you to produce. Now, you get to a certain point, and then you're becoming so competitive in the forum that you then move to the next level of taking your company public and making it available for the public to invest in your company. There are several exchanges or indices where you can do that. There's the South African has its own
JSE.
marketplace, the JSE, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The U.S. has two, actually three, but the third one isn't really available for the public. It has New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq. The New York Stock Exchange is what we call the old school stocks, the conglomerates, the banks, the stocks that have been around pre 1990. I call it.
Yeah.
Um, in the 1980s, late 80s, early 90s, the Nasdaq became a very big exchange in the U.S. Because it listed mostly tech stocks that couldn't list themselves in the New York Stock Exchange because they weren't big enough. Could you imagine? At one point, Apple, yeah, Amazon didn't even exist at that time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, so that's exactly what stocks are. Basically, they sell a share, a portion of their company to the public, in order for investors to invest in their company.
It,
Um,
I've always liked that concept. I mean, I think in one of our very first chats, you told me that, if you buy a stock, I mean, it's you physically owning, a portion of, a company, whether it be Amazon, Nike, Google, right? I mean, if they were one single store, you would own what? A brick, for example, in the entire store. And I always like that concept, you know. So, you've spoken about how how the stock market is formed. So how do you go about, actually buying and selling stocks, in one of your favorite companies?
So we have here at CMTrading, we have a list of publicly traded stocks internationally, actually, from the European market and from the US market that traders can actually trade with. Now, you're not actually buying the physical stock and you're not getting stock certificates. You're buying the CFD, which allows you to trade it. So it acts and it trades, like any stock does. So if you buy Microsoft, you're actually trading Microsoft. And the price is actually the price of Microsoft. So it's a very user-friendly system of trading the financial markets without necessarily having to have the high cost of buying it through the bank and having stock certificates sent to you and all that big process of trading the financial markets. So it's just really simple. You open up a platform at CMTrading.
Right.
You put some money into the account, and you can trade Microsoft, Amazon, any one of those big companies. And there's a list of maybe, I don't know, 100 or less than 100 of major stocks that you could trade. And you're not looking to trade every single stock because not every single stock is tradable. So we focus on the big ones for clients to trade with.
So just on that, right? Let's say I pick a company. Let's do, like you said, Apple, for example, right? I'm really interested in, trading Apple. I happen to have some, expendable income that I can put into some Apple stock. What kind of research should I be doing when trading stocks?
Well, there's one or two approaches when you're trading the financial markets. There's the fundamental approach and there's the technical approach. The fundamental approach is really basing more the data of Apple from quarter to quarter and comparing it and seeing what the true value, the potential value of what Apple stocks should, quote unquote, be worth. Okay. Stocks are always 6 months in advance. So they're not really worth their potential. Interestingly enough, they're not worth what they are now because investors and speculators are anticipating a certain return that the company will bring. Now, the more the company makes, the more the value of the company increases and the stock price increases, and vice versa, right? The less the company makes, the less value it has, and it loses its price in the stock, right? The price goes down. Um, so that's one approach. The other approach is technical trading, watching market action, watching anticipation of reversals and technical indicators of looking into the market and seeing, kind of like a repeat in the market and a repeat to that particular stock. Or is it trending in one direction or another direction? Is it range bound trading? And then, you really, because the financial markets, and this is really the interesting part. I'm talking a lot here, Sergio, but this is really very important to note.
Okay.
When
Okay.
you're a financial institution, right? You're a pension. You're a kind of like um, let's call it a mutual fund. You need to invest in certain assets in order to have those returns. Now, historically speaking, the type of assets that bring you those type of returns are the tech stocks. So you want to invest, let's say, in Microsoft. You're a big pension and you need to invest in Microsoft. Well, you can't just call Microsoft and say, hey guys, I'd like to buy 500,000 shares in your stock, right?
All right.
You actually have to go into the marketplace and buy 500,000 shares of Microsoft. Now, the problem
Right.
is, if I know that you're buying, Sergio, what am I going to do? I'm a seller. I'm going to increase the price. So you then approach a broker or a market maker and you say, listen, guys, I need to buy $500,000, 500,000 shares of Microsoft. Okay. You guys get me the best price. And so they give like small orders to two or three major financial institutions. Whoever gives them the best price. Okay. Average price for, let's say, 10,000 shares. And we're talking about very small numbers here, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so whoever gets the best price, they get the order, and they say, okay, since you guys got the best price, it means that you guys have some sort of good market making in this particular stock. We're going to give you the 500,000 shares to buy. And then they buy it in the marketplace. But at a certain point, we know that there's a buyer in the market for Microsoft because the stock keeps on going higher, right? And if they know something about something, so it means that the market starts, picking things up. And that's how it happens in the marketplace. There's no real secret to it. It's all
Well,
exposed to the
that's good.
future. And this is part of the funny part, Sergio, when you look into these pensions, right, and I'm not talking about just South Africa, I'm talking about the entire world, right? And you're looking for the most stable economy to place your money in, and usually that's the United States. So with that said, can you imagine how much money is being traded on the financial markets as a result of that? So that's just
Hundreds
one
of
country with one
billions
pension.
to trillions.
Okay, now I've stopped talking. But
No,
it's real.
I think it's useful for people to know, the scale and specifically how it works. So, to aid things off, what advice would you have for traders in 2024?
Okay, so there's several ways to trade the financial markets, specifically with stocks. You could trade sectors, meaning I'm trading only bank stocks. Now, there are going to be
Okay,
some bank
okay.
stocks that are going to be stronger. There are going to be some bank stocks that are not as strong, right? So I
So
could,
instead of JP Morgan, you'd be trading the banking sector that it's within.
well, so I'll be trading bank. You mentioned JP Morgan, which just saw new all-time record highs for the past, I don't know, month and a half. So I'll be trading JP Morgan, and against it, I'll be trading the Bank of America, which is not as strong, okay,
Right.
but is also within that sector. So I could trade things against each other, okay, within a sector, or I could trade. And since we are talking about the banks, like if there's interest rates, like this week we have the FOMC. If there's an interest rate decision, it's going to affect the banks. The banks are really the ones to profit the most out of increased interest rates or decreased interest rates, whatever the situation is in the market. And so that's also a strategy to trade the banks in that type of environment. Now, every sector has its own strengths and weaknesses, and it has
Sure.
its right.
I
So
mean,
right
look
now,
at the pharmaceutical industry during COVID compared
right,
to where
they
it
did
is now.
Moderna and Pfizer did fantastic, right? And
Right.
um, right now, what's hot in the market, and we've mentioned this several times, is the semiconductors and the chip makers,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
Nvidia and the AMD, okay, which are, but Intel's not making as much money, and they're trading more sideways as opposed to upwards. So these are things to keep in mind all the time when you're trading the financial markets. It's really very important that there are so many strategies. I mean, there is countless strategies that you can apply to the stock
Sure.
market, much more than you can apply to trading Forex or any of the other types of markets. So that's really, if you're looking to get into trading right now, is probably the hottest time I've ever seen in history to trade
Wow.
stocks and U.S. markets. I mean, it's been like that for the past 8 years.
Jeez. I mean, we've seen it, you know, never mind, in the FANG stocks, we've seen some newcomers. I mean, you mentioned Nvidia, right? 5 years ago, Nvidia was, well, I mean, it was one of the biggest players in the, graphics card space to go towards, dethroning Apple possibly this year as one of the world's most valuable companies. So yeah, stock market is a very strange and amazing thing to watch in action. You
Lots of
know,
opportunities, lots
lots
of
of opportunities. And on that note, I'm going to leave things there. Please like and subscribe, and I will see everybody on the next one.